I feel nauseous, believe me. Never had a lot of shit come easy. Had to work hard, struggle just to be me. Had to and what was left over I put towards my dreaming. But the only thing in life that has meaning are the things you gotta work for, believe me. Take into your hands a plan, your own hands can land your own brand. And damn, I feel like no one takes accountability. They want the credibility, convincingly unwilling to put in the hours it takes to get some power. Don't be f***ing sour, take a cold shower. Scream until you're louder, work until you're prouder. And f*** all the doubters, they're just your downers. I swear to God they all let me down. I always fought.
I can tell you that 7 years after Freddie Gray, that was 2015, spring, April, May. This is 2022. Communities like Sandtown, all we saw then and now in terms of investment was a renovated Western District Police Station and a new funeral home. That's what West Baltimore got. A new police station and a new funeral home. What kind of optics are they?
Good morning. My name is Mike Haynie. I am filling in for the incredible Donnie Glover, who's down at the White House on assignment for BlackUSA.News. I host 60 Minutes in Black America each and every Sunday at 6 p.m., as well as Wake Up Baltimore every Monday at 7:30 a.m. And today we're talking about term limits, in addition to some other things. We have some remarkable guests on joining us today. And Donnie, travel safely. We're looking forward to what you bring back from the White House to Baltimore. But term limits in Baltimore, term limits around the country, term limits around our state have been things that we have been concerned about, has been something that we've been concerned about for a number of years. So today in the studio, and I'm excited that we already have Mr. Patterson, Giovanni Patterson, who spearheaded in Baltimore, along with, I think it was Fox 45 or Sinclair Broadcast that put money behind it. We're going to talk about that with Mr. Patterson in a few minutes. But just to give a bit of a backdrop in terms of term limits, for those that may not be familiar with term limits, it means that if you're a politician, in terms of being able to serve consecutively and contiguously in an office, there's a limitation. Be it one term as they do for the Virginia governor, or be it two terms as they do for the Maryland state governor, that you can't serve more than two consecutive terms. And it even goes in some jurisdictions to a point that after you serve your term limit, you can't skip a period and then come back and run again, which is what the Baltimore Question K is what it's called in Baltimore City. Question K. Special K is what we're going to call it, in terms of whether we finally get to a point, where the good old boy system and the pay to play, meaning that special interest rules the day, and that some of our aspiring, particularly young politicians have an opportunity to run for office because it's not something that someone owns anymore. So let's bring in first, and I see we have another panelist also, Miss Deborah Morris, and we'll find out exactly what Miss Morris claim to fame is and what she wants to talk about. But we're going to bring in Mr. Patterson first, so we can begin this term limit conversation. Hey, Mr. Patterson, how you doing today, man?
Man, I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic, man. I've heard a lot about you. I'm from Baltimore originally. Never have had a chance to meet you, but we've met each other today. And, what better, beautiful subject. And, I know that you've been doing a lot around school board, school initiatives. So I've been kind of like shoplifting a bit of your information and looking around you and seeing what's going on with you and your family. I think, was it you and your wife that were instrumental in the school board suit as well?
Yep. So that's still ongoing. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And hopefully we'll get a chance before you have to go. And I know that you're time limited today, even though we're talking term limit, you're time limited today. And so we want to respect that and talk to what it is that Donnie asked me to ensure that you came on the show to for as well. I want to bring in someone else. I'm not very familiar with Miss Morris, but Miss Morris, thank you so much. How are you doing today?
I'm blessed, humble, and free. How about yourself?
I am absolutely humble and free and blessed as well. Thank you so much for being on the Donnie Glover Morning Show today, talking about term limits. And give us a little bit about your background, Miss Morris.
Well, I'm a recent transplant here to Maryland from Philadelphia. Just about a year, 2 years now. And I am a senior civil rights activist. I was one of the individuals that was in Raleigh, North Carolina at Shaw University, sit-ins. I also walked, one of the help organizers of the Million Man March, my husband and I. We also were very active in the legislation change in Philadelphia. I also have miles of stories to tell about the people who I've walked with and sat with and helped to make a difference in this country for our people, people of color, but not only people of color, but all people.
Wow.
And to make sure that the Constitution was applied correctly to all people.
Wow.
And not just a certain group of people. And
Well,
that's why
powerful.
I'm sitting here. That's why I'm sitting here today.
That's powerful, Ms. Morris, and I'm glad that you signed in to contribute to this conversation, because it's activists like you that don't just sit home and punch holes in things, but are out there in the streets. And it sounds like you're a show all into yourself, particularly as you said, with the miles of stories. I want to hear just 2 or 3 miles of those stories that you have, because I can imagine they're compelling. And Philadelphia politics is not for the faint of heart. I know that. My sister lives in Center City at 5th and Spruce, man, for years. Fortunately, she didn't convert to be an Eagles fan, but in spite of that, we're going to let you stay on the show anyway.
I never
You know what
strayed.
I'm saying? It's all good. It's all good. But let's start off with this term limits conversation. And Mr. Patterson, because you have been instrumental in it, why don't you give us a bit of backdrop in terms of term limits, referendum question K on the upcoming general election ballot. Give us a bit of backdrop in terms of why you advocated for term limits here in Baltimore City.
Well, it really kind of stems back to things I ran on, when I was running for office. I did run for city council, the office of city council president back in 2020. Believe it or not, I'm not really a big fan of politics, but that was, kind of an avenue that I saw to get involved. But one thing that one of my objectives was, to bring, transparency and bring back the civic engagement back within our city hall. One thing we notice is that a lot of our politicians today say the people don't know how government works. So what happens is that there's this disconnect between the government and the people that they're supposed to serve. It's like they're almost, battling. Like there has to be this kind of elite class, these certain type of people to go or to be politicians, because the rest of the common folk don't understand how politics work or how government works, when government is really supposed to be for the people and by the people. So if we've gotten to that point where the common people, the common man or the everyday person or everyday citizen of Baltimore doesn't know how government works, that's a huge problem. So, one of the ideas behind, term limits is saying, hey, let's return power back to the people. Let's get, people back involved. And our organization piece is called People for Elected Accountability and Civic Engagement. So that civic engagement is just getting people back involved, getting people back excited about the civic process, and that it really is to serve the community and not just these political careers that create these political statues, that we can see in office today. So, the idea of term limits, I think it's just healthy for good government, and it's just following the process that has been adopted in a lot of other major jurisdictions. I just think it's a good move to help Baltimore out.
Hey, well, great, man. We'll get back to peace, which you represent, and we also want to get Ms. Morris' perspective on term limits. Are there term limits in Philadelphia, Ms. Morris? And what is your perspective on term limits?
There were term limits, not term limits, in Pennsylvania, and we fought to have term limits. And that was one basis was because of nepotism. And nepotism, once a person is in a seat for so long, it begins to be favored to a certain group of people, and certain group of people are eliminated from any kind of legislation that is developed or put in place. Same way with other parts of the country had term limits. That's why it was years ago a suit was ensued for the states. And if you go back to, that's when I have to piggyback on the gentleman in terms of individuals really don't know legislation and should know and understand, because term limits goes back to the Constitution. And under the Constitution, it says, no state shall imply any, or the supremacy clause in the Constitution says no state shall develop any kind of legislation that would deny persons' rights of equality. And under that, when you develop something like that, and you cannot speak with the person that you elected, and they serve your, you have a need, then it comes back to they're violating your constitutional civil rights.
Wow, that's powerful. That's powerful. Ms. Morris, let me ask you a question, simple question, before we go back to Mr. Patterson with a question. Michael Nutter, right? Wasn't that your
that's
former
my
mayor?
kitchen.
Wasn't Mr. Nutter your mayor up there in Philadelphia?
Yes.
What kind of mayor was he?
Okay, Mayor.
Okay, so how many terms did he serve?
2.
Okay, was that because it was a limit, or because you all got sick of him and you voted him out?
We got sick of him.
Okay, well, good. So, Mr. Patterson, so is that not the solution sometimes? And, you know, what I feel as a commentator is irrelevant to what the people and the activists feel, so I try to keep my commentary down. But why can't we vote out people after one term if we feel they're ineffective, or deem them ineffective, or after 3 terms if we deem them ineffective? Why are term limits a necessary mandate in a city like Baltimore from your perspective?
Well, again, I think it just goes back to just having healthy and good government. I think there should be you know, some guardrails, but one thing is, yeah, we may have someone that we like, and probably, and you know, after a while, like maybe the term should be ended, because there it doesn't make room for like new ideas or you know, just progress, really. Like, I mean, look at the United States. I mean, the president of the United States is limited to 2 terms, right? If we have a great president, you know, for 8 years, that's still the limit. Why aren't we saying for Americans, you know, as a country, that you know, the people would just vote the person out if you know, if they're going the wrong way? I mean, again, I just think it's good government, and and really is to avoid these career politicians, right? Because the goal is for the politicians and the government to serve the people. And after a while, when you're making a career of it, you're just fighting for your job. You're just fighting to keep that position, that status quo.
You know, that's a great point, Mr. Patterson. And I want to get back to you specifically because you represent people for elected or elect accountability and civic engagement, right? That's what PEACE stands for, right? And I want to talk about that. And was that the impetus for getting question K on the city ballot?
Yeah. So I mean, so the name of the
I want you to hold at the yes, and then we can quantify it. I want to get Lou and Christina in so that we can have a good, robust conversation with you, since that was the impetus. You said yes, that PEACE was the one that carried this forward, and I want a real,
I came up with
robust
the name of the
conversation.
organization.
Huh?
So I came up with the name of the organization.
Yeah, but weren't you the one that weren't you the instigator of Question K in Baltimore City?
Yes.
Okay, great. So we're going to come back to you and ask you a little bit more specifics regarding that in Question K and Sinclair Broadcasting and the Smith family and the Patarakis and Brandon Scott referendum that didn't pass, et cetera, because there seems to be, a bit involved with all of that. But Lou Fields, man, thank you for coming on, Lou. How you doing today?
Doing well. Thank you.
Lou, you always look like you are President Obama behind the White House desk, man. Lou turns from the left to the right. He's got so much stuff going on, right? But it's always good to have someone like Lou in the studio with the history that he has of our city. And Lou, you know Larry Gibson very well, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Larry Gibson is a historian like you, Lou. And Lou, and from a city perspective, man, give us your take on our politics, man. Our politicians, as concise as you can. Let's start from, was Kurt Smoke the first elected Black politician in Baltimore City?
The first Black elected mayor.
Mayor.
But let me say hello to our friends from Philadelphia, Ms. Morris.
Hello.
Glad to see you here in Baltimore working with us. And we understand things in Philly are similar to Black people in Baltimore. So appreciate you. And Brother Patterson, been following your career for a long time. And I salute you for your advocacy and where you have us at today. I really appreciate a young brother coming up like you're doing. You and your wife, real big respect.
Thank you.
Hey, Kim, is that Christine right there?
That's
Christina.
That's Doc Flowers, Minister.
Happy birthday,
Doc
girl. I heard you had a birthday. Did you have a birthday?
Happy birthday.
You had a birthday, I believe. This is another advocate, iconic advocate in Baltimore. And I guess Miss Flowers really represents why we need term limits in Baltimore. The work that she does, the battle work she does, to focus on those who need the help the most, except for those in the hospital. Nobody needs help more than the homeless. And this young lady, Miss Flowers, has dedicated her life to that. But public policy in Baltimore and funding, because she's not an insider at City Hall, she's out here struggling with Black mayors. Why do we need term limits? In the last 32 odd years, 26 of them we've had Black mayors. And the Black mayors have not delivered to West Baltimore and Santana in particular. However, over the years, we've seen these African Americans in leadership and politics hire their sisters and brothers, give contracts to their friends, play loosey-goosey with the city budget. But good people like Miss Flowers and others across our city, it's about 200 people doing good work, can't get no funding from City Hall. But these Black politicians, not all of them, will give millions of dollars in tips and pilots, buy a $300 million hotel, pay $7 million a year now to keep it afloat. Just gave it $16 million. Great Blacks and Whites, no millions. So how do we make change in public policy? We not only have to vote people in that we think will do the right thing based on what they said during the campaign, but we need checks and balances. We don't have no checks and balances at City Hall. And why do you need term limits? One of the major reasons is the power of the incumbency. If you're a sitting elected official in Baltimore City, it's a hard task to get you unelected. We did it one time in the last 10 years.
No doubt about that, Lou. There's no doubt about that. But we're going to set the stage and the platform for what you just compellingly mentioned, the power of incumbency. But let's bring Sister or Minister now, Christina, I call her Doc Flowers, right? Who is a fierce, tireless advocate for our homeless and for doing right by the people. Doc or Minister Flowers, let me title you correctly now. Welcome to the Donnie Glover Show. I've always admired you. Talk to us, Minister Flowers. What's going on with you? We know you're always out there. You said you're under the bridge now. They moved you under the bridge, huh? I think we got you. Okay, let's take you off of mute so people can hear you. Doc?
You hear me
Go
now?
for it. Yes, yes, we can hear you now.
Okay. So, thank you so much. Thank you, brother, as well. Thank you to you, brother Mike, for always being that type of consistency in my activism. And I think you guys are hitting things right, and I say that because I always look at myself as a newly educated voter. One thing about Baltimore City, born and raised in Baltimore City, I don't have a lot of history about politicians or politics. But in this recent 10 years, I had to become more conscious of it through the homeless population, through the underserved, through the underprivileged. And right now, like today, we setting up an encampment basically because our city and our government don't have the space to accommodate the great number of homeless individuals that's increasing in our streets. And for some reason, I definitely agree with this term limitation because, right now you can hear the mayor in DC, you can hear the mayor in New York coming out saying they got a crisis, they need help. They just got over what? 10,000 immigrants. But our mayor will not come out and say anything in reference to a call for help, a call to let people know that we have a homeless crisis in Baltimore City. And we are currently looking at $90.4 million of opera emergency money that's not being given to no one's emergency. Like they got this money in position, and you can look on the mayor's website and look at the 5-tier strategic plan for homelessness. Everything in that plan is long-term solutions.
Well,
Everything in that
Minister Flowers, we're going to give you a chance to talk to us more in detail about that. And as you said, why term limits are needed, because maybe when people are motivated to do the right thing because they know they have a limitation
yes,
to get things done, that we see a different sense of urgency. But to Mr. Patterson's having to leave us in a few minutes, and as he mentioned, he's the one that started this, right? My question to you,
yes,
Mr. Patterson, you started this, but you also were funded by Sinclair Broadcast, right, to the tune of almost $400,000 to get the signatures necessary to get this on the ballot. Is that correct?
Yeah, so the organization was started, a little bit earlier. Again, I have no clue how all this, kind of came about. It's just, I believed in something. You start talking about it, you meet people in the community, and then one thing leads to another one. And so this organization, we came about, and we were able to secure funding from Mr. Smith. I think it's important to kind of differentiate that, yeah, he is the owner of Sinclair Broadcast, but he's also a private citizen. He's a private citizen. He has multiple businesses within Baltimore. He employs multiple, like, thousands of people around Baltimore area. So it's one thing to just say stuff, and it's another thing to say, hey, let's do something about it. And there's another kind of interesting story. Like,
so when you say that, Mr. Patterson, there's one thing to do something, and there's another thing to say, let's do something about it. Are you saying that Mr. Smith, in his advocacy for term limits, living in Baltimore County in one of the largest houses in the state, with, as you said, business, be it through his son, the Atlas Restaurant Group, the same group that kicked a little black kid out during the course of the pandemic, and the relationship with the Patarakises, that there isn't a point of collusion to, so some people think there's a strategy towards gentrification with their motive to back question K, that they had some ulterior motives. You didn't see that, or you not care?
Well, no, I mean, I'm a black man. I mean, so there's one thing there. So we're kind of looking at, um, he's funding a black man. So what's the point there? Um, so I really don't understand the argument, to be honest. Because like I said, Mr. Smith, as a private citizen and a business owner, employs multiple people around the state. And I understand there have been, some issues and some concerns that come up. But let's look at the overall picture. Like, how many black people does Atlas Restaurant Group, how many black people attend Atlas restaurants? I've known even current city council personnel renting out Atlas restaurants to hold their birthday functions, campaign functions, doing those type of things. So if we're concerned about gentrification, then it's already the politicians that are, they're funding Mr. Smith. So if you're visiting his restaurant, you're funding him, and now he's helping out with this particular initiative.
So what's the relationship between Sinclair Broadcasting and people elected accountability and civic engagement? Anything in the future beyond that? Because they also ran out of time in their funding of another referendum to recall Brandon Scott. Is that accurate?
Well, so again, the people for elected accountability, that elected accountability was kind of the part for the recall petition that we had out. So that was under.
So you had the recall petition
yeah,
out.
So recall petition,
you guys did the recall
and the term
petition.
limits was under my organization.
So is it because you're a Republican and Brandon's a Democratic mayor, or because you really felt as though he was ineffective that you voted to recall him? You wanted to recall him?
No, again, I think it's one of those things where it's just good government. And it's really about returning power back to the people.
So it's good government to recall the mayor, as they did out in California?
It's good government to be able to have the people have the option to recall the mayor. Again, this isn't
Ms.
about
Morris, what do you think about that, Ms. Morris?
It isn't about the news organization trying to recall the mayor. It is about the people. We have to remember that the people are the ones that signed the petition. The people are the one that's saying, "Hey, I agree with this idea." I mean, we had to collect over 10,000 signatures for each of these, so it's not just what a news station is saying. It's what the people are feeling and going through on the streets of Baltimore. We're seeing lives lost every day. We're seeing the mayor only attend ribbon cuttings. Like this is what we're seeing.
Well, I hope you hang around. I hope you hang around long enough, Mr. Patterson. Oh, we're going to let you speak, Ms. Morris. Hope you hang around, Mr. Patterson, so you can answer one more question: the accountability of the people that you say asked for the recall. Ms. Morris, what did you have to say to that point?
2 points. Number one, the mayor can't do it by himself. It takes the entire body of city council, and not only the legislative body of the state. If you're looking for money to come down, and number two, in terms of signatures, I don't understand that position, because anytime that we got things put on the ballot, it was done by the people. Okay, we walked the streets, we printed the forms, and we had individuals who were in our community that wrote the ballot drop in order for it to be put on the ballot. So I don't understand where the money comes in. Like I said, I'm from Philadelphia. I'm from a different era. Number two, in terms of, there is legislation that's already in place. The position of these council people and the mayor, they should go in and do their research and learn the legislation. There should be no homeless in the city of Baltimore, period. There has not been any kind of service put in place for the homeless people, because these so-called departments that are there, I call it, my position is killing me slowly with no service, because there's desk sitters and there are no doors.
Wow,
they do
that's
not
powerful.
And see who's there, who are homeless. Okay.
Well,
and If there's
You know,
enough votes,
Miss Morris, that is a powerful point. We're going to talk about that beyond a few minutes because I definitely want Mr. Patterson to hear some of the conversation. I want to go to Miss Flowers and ask Miss Flowers, do you think that Mayor Brandon Scott should be recalled, or were you one that would have supported the recall referendum being on the general election ballot this coming November?
Well, I'm gonna have to back off my powerful sister, Miss Morris there. One thing I know for sure is the mayor cannot do it alone. But we also have to be mindful of some of the characteristics behavior, like even recently, when they were dealing with the change of the Safe Street agenda, like closed door meeting and didn't even bring in the city council president. And once the city council president made that public, it really, it could really put a lot of
Hey, Miss Flowers, we're losing you. We're losing you. Your sound, Christine, your sound is like in and out a bit, and it may be due to your cell phone. Your sound is in and out a bit. We're going to ask Lou Fields his thought while Miss Flowers gets her technology straight. Mr. Fields, do you think that the mayor should have been on a recall as a referendum on the general election ballot in November?
Well, I think sometimes there are ideas and questions like this that you can give a yes or no answer to. In my opinion, I think I rather focus on the term limit part of it as opposed to using that particular issue to critique whether or not Mayor Scott should be recalled. I think we often have to look at how much can we bite off at one time. Just achieving the goal of getting question or ballot K passed, that is an enormous task in our city. In the last primary election, 148,000 people voted. To get the term limit bill passed requires all of our focus. And if we want to focus on trying to recall the mayor simultaneously and trying to get term limits passed, we will lose both of those battles.
Wow.
I believe we can win the battle to get term limits voted in this city. Because of the last 34 years, Black politicians, 29 of those 34, have represented the city of Baltimore, particularly West Baltimore, where we have had the clinic, the Baltimore Health Clinic on 1515 North Avenue. We've had 4 or 5 mayors from West Baltimore. They all know the condition of that place. They all know. When you look at the congressional district of the 7th district that represents Sandtown, been held by a Black man since 1970. They all know the conditions, but they have looked towards waterfront development, pay to play. Let's govern in a way of we're trying to get reelected at the same time.
Wow, that's powerful. Mr. Fields, we're going to get back to you. I want Mr. Patterson to have a couple of minutes as he transitions off. He has to go and go to work, so he's got things to do. So, Mr. Patterson, we're going to give you 2-3 minutes, man, if that's what you have, to kind of wrap up your thoughts and convey to the people of Baltimore why peace and why Mr. Giovanni Patterson was instrumental behind this and why we should go out and support this. And is this a reason alone for us to go to the polls and vote in the general election?
So yeah, absolutely. Again, the aim of what we're trying to do is return power back to the people, and that's honestly my ultimate goal. The people of Baltimore, the citizens of Baltimore, should ultimately, have the voice that shouldn't be taken away by career politicians, by establishment, political statutes. So I encourage everyone, to vote okay on question K. This time around. But we have to also remember it is our civic duty to be involved. It's our civic duty to read the Baltimore City Charter. It's our civic duty to understand how government works. So we can't just vote and expect everything to be okay. It's our civic duty and responsibility to make sure our elected officials are upholding their end of the job. And remember, they work for us. Like when you take a look at the Baltimore City Charter and the Baltimore City budget, that organization chart, the top box says the people, and everybody else flows from that. Everything else flows from that. And that's what our organization is really designed to do, is tangible ways where we can put give the power back to the people. So vote okay on question K.
Hey, great, Mr. Patterson. I appreciate it. And that power to the people, I was trying to remember where I heard that before. And then I said, I interviewed Dan Cox this past Sunday on 60 Minutes in Black America, and he talked about giving power back to the people as well, right? So that was kind of his slogan, giving power back to the people.
Well,
he's been all over Baltimore. He stole it from you. Do you all support each other? Do you support Dan Cox?
Well, I honestly, I would like to see Dan Cox win over Wes Moore for various reasons.
So that means yes?
Yeah, so that means yes. It's not because I don't want to see the first black governor of Maryland. That's not it. It's just some of the policies that I think Wes Moore supports are detrimental, particularly to the black community, particularly things like abortion, things like a lot of the things in education. It's really detrimental to the black community, and I really can't stand with it.
Hey, guess what, man? You are powerful enough, from my estimation, that you may deserve a spot on 60 Minutes in Black America. I put my number in the chat, right? And you go back and watch the interview with Dan Cox that I performed, as well as Wes Moore. But I think, we need someone like you to speak with the people across the country about politics, party politics. But listen, you have an awesome day, man, and thank you so much for joining us, okay?
It was an honor. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. So let's go back to Mr. Lou Fields. Mr. Fields, you were talking about the atrocities of our politicians, particularly in what let's call them wards, like they do in Philadelphia, and ward politics, ward mafia, et cetera, right? And this is a good reason for us to have referendum or question K on the ballot, right? We know homelessness is a business, and it will never end. Christina Flowers, I'm just saying this as a citizen, right? Christina Flowers is out there advocating, thank God for her, but homelessness is a $1 billion industry, and it will never end, right? So is politics, in your estimation, and Ms. Flowers, we're gonna get to you because I know you chomping at the bit to get back at me with what I just said, right? But Mr. Fields, is the political arena likewise a multi-billion-dollar business in terms of special interests and development, et cetera, and that's why they don't want term limits? Let me put you off of mute, sir. Hang on one second. Go ahead, Mr. Fields. Mr. Fields, you're on mute, man. If you can hear me, you're on mute.
Yeah, the other side of that coin that you just described as a $1 billion sector in our nation's economy, public policy, there is also another side of that coin. It's the comfortability, it's the intrigue, it's the intangibles of walking into any place in your city and not having to pay because you say, I'm a city council person. I represent the elected officials, the community. I come in and I'm not paying for anything. And when I walk in the room, because my schedule is so tight, whatever agenda you have, when I walk in and I'm your elected officials, you got to stop your agenda and put me right up because I'm the VIP. That's what we look to. In years past, before we had black elected officials, it was the preacher. It was the preacher who got this kind of respect. Then when we got the politician, it's now the preacher and the politician. When they walk into a room, time out, they hear, they only got 2 seconds, they got to go. They don't pay for this, they don't pay for that. They get company cars. Look, the city council president is sending by his chief of staff, already hired, already in position. He's sending him to England for $9,000 on our taxpayers' dollars. So this guy, who already has a job, so he can go to England to learn how to do the job. So there is a comfortness or a little bit of intrigue when you walk in and you say, I am delegate this, I'm senator this, I'm city council this, I'm mayor this. they take themselves to a higher level beyond what's called a public servant. When they get back to the Perrin Mitchell style of being a public service, get back to the Little Carl Jackson style of being a public service, get back to the Elijah Cummings style of being a public service. What we have now, unfortunately, are inexperienced, lack of political savvy people downtown Baltimore. If you making deals and you willing and dealing, you bringing in CIAA, you doing all this waterfront development, you spending millions and billions to redo stadiums, you building football, baseball, but yet you can't fix a health clinic when the federal government gave you $641 million for the COVID relief, and you represent West Baltimore, Dixon, Wallace Blake, Kirk Smoke, Captain Pugh, all out of Ashburn, all out of West Baltimore. This boy we got now, not boy, but this mayor we got now, he from Park Heights. How come he don't know 1515 needs attention 2 years in? So there is that part about the Democrats having this exclusive club that they do stuff that you and I don't get invitations to. They meet regularly at exclusive places, and you and I don't get to go there. At that meeting, they make decisions on who they think should be your elected official, who they think should be your mayor. And they also decide what resources come to your area. Last thing, they say Sandtown doesn't vote, but in Baltimore City's voting history, Ward 15, 21215, was the #1 voting block in the city of Baltimore for years. For years. Today, there's only one white fellow, Councilman Eric Costello, who represents any part of West Baltimore. Everybody else is black. City council president, state senators, state delegates, our Congress people, all of them are black folks. Now, how can they not know before Freddie Gray and really after Freddie Gray, Santan need help? How can they not know that, Mike? So
wow, that's powerful. That's powerful.
Maybe we need to talk about recalling somebody, but we know definitely in Baltimore City, we need term limits. It's no doubt about it. Because if not, Mike, we would see more job opportunities. We'll see more young people getting skilled vocational training. We'll see more people getting off the street. We would definitely see less gunfire and less crime. We see all of that because of what's missing in these communities. You see, you take a black community that has the right stuff going on, more home ownership, city services, young people getting a quality public school education, getting on to a community college or go technical school or going somewhere and learning something. Those communities stabilize and sustain themselves. You take a community like Santan, Penn North, Green Mountain North, and you take out resources, you get what we're getting every day. And who is in charge of the public policy? It's not Republicans. A Republican hasn't held office in Baltimore City in 60 years. Can't blame them. It's not white folk. Ain't no white folk represent Penn North for a long time. Eric Costello got the bottom part of it, but you know his interest is Federal Hill, Riverside. He ain't worried about Pennsylvania Avenue. So we have to look at who did we elect over these 30 years to be in charge of improving the quality of life and people who they say don't vote, but they pay taxes. Everybody paying taxes in Baltimore. Everybody in Baltimore paying utility bills, cell phone bills, taxes, this, speed cameras, this. We paying. We are paying. The poor of Baltimore pay heavy. So why aren't we getting better resources and better attention from our elected officials? I tell you why. They know we have limited power once we elect them in.
Wow.
Once we put in a brother called Brandon Scott, the things he ran on, the things he promised have long gone away. He went out of town and hired everybody out of town to be his deputy people. Hardly could find some Baltimoreans money things down there. And what happens with that? You get an out of towner like Ted Carter, did some work with Obama in the White House. Well, Scott gives him the deputy mayor position. So people like me, small business people, economic people, chosen people, we asked to meet with the mayor. The mayor said, you meet with this guy. This guy was impossible to meet with. I mean, for a year and a half, we couldn't meet with the deputy mayor. We normally meet with the mayor, but we couldn't meet with the mayor.
Is that the deputy mayor that was gone because of the way that he governed?
Not only gone, but good and gone.
Yeah,
good and gone, because he was being improperly relating to our people. And so what I'm saying to you is people like Miss Flowers should be heading up some damn homeless position downtown Baltimore with not only a budget to do the work, but a freaking six-figure salary so she can take care of her house.
Are you saying to me, and we're going to unmute Miss Flowers now, you saying to me that she should be the one that should be in charge of the homeless
Yes.
bureaucracy of Baltimore City, and that's what we
Yes.
should do? We should look at the advocates and elect them?
Well, words are so important. Miss Flowers doesn't have to be in charge of the whole thing, because you know the city department, housing community development, is going to be in charge of everything. But she surely could be a paid consultant, a paid liaison, a spokesperson for the people she done dedicated, I guess, 20 years to help out.
So what do you think about that, Miss Flowers?
Like that?
Miss Flowers, what do you think about that?
Well, one of the things I can always say about that is when it comes to transparency and accountability, you have to have the people interests at heart. And when I think about our homeless population, their voices have to be heard. And when you're looking at the issues that they face on a daily basis, it has to be a certain level of compassion. It has to be a certain level of righteousness. But it definitely needs to be something inside. And just in reference to Brother Lou Fields, we get so much transition in this administration. Like, I have been through 4 homeless directors in a matter of 10 years. So I don't know if that's a strategic plan. I don't know if it's deliberate, because you try to meet with certain individuals and they don't have the same focus nor the same accountability level. So, you know, I definitely would consider being a consultant in Baltimore City, because so many different agencies, even the hospitals, they drop the ball a lot. And when I say they drop the ball a lot, when people come into hospitals and you know they're homeless, then that's when the help should really start. You need to start when they come in the hospital, not discharge them back to the same environment. And we have a lot of that going on right here in Baltimore City. But a lot of people don't discuss it anymore, you know, since the Rebecca story. If everybody remember the Rebecca story, the homeless lady that was discharged in the middle of the night, and the brother Baraka came and made a real big issue about it. Like, that happens every day. Homeless people going in the hospital for all kinds of reasons on these streets, and they just put back out into the same environment, the same atmosphere. So I would definitely consider being a consultant for Baltimore City Homeless Services.
So let me ask you, Ms. Flowers, to what I made a statement to, and then we're going to go to Ms. Morris and ask Ms. Morris about her political feel for the state and the city. But is homelessness a enterprise that people are making billions and hundreds of millions of dollars off that no one really wants to go away? It's cyclical in terms of you may get some off or some come on. Is it realistic for us to think that we can end homelessness?
It is a realistic task, Brother Michael. It can be done. If you look at the levels of homelessness right now on the streets, it's definitely doable. But again, you're looking at an entity that probably brings close to $75 million a year just into certain agencies. And this is not including incentives and other things that people get. So it's definitely a multi-million dollar setup, because if the money was flowing and really affecting the lives of the individuals on the streets, we would not have no homeless individuals on our streets. If we would target with solutions, and the biggest thing, and I'll close in saying this, we have an administration that look at stakeholders and critical investors. This is what they call their white corporations. This is what they call the Quebec player. They call them their stakeholders. They call them their critical investors. Well, I have a problem with that, because I look at us as being grassroots organizations, advocates, and activists. And I got so much reverence and respect for some of the older, wiser advocates like the Lou Fields, like the Dr. Humphrey, like Dr. Cheatham. Like these individuals shouldn't have to be battling. They are investors in this city. They are the stakeholders. You have your children, you have your grandchildren, you have your legacy to leave in this city. So why should we be considered stakeholders and critical investors to be considered, just to be considered at the table when it comes to solutions? So I believe it's something that is deliberately done to where they want us to have a certain number of homeless people on the streets of Baltimore City.
Wow. So, Miss Flowers, Doc Flowers, Minister Flowers, and you deserve it all, man. And I've always been supportive of your advocacy because
Yes.
of you and your energy. And I understand exactly what Mr. Fields said, that your passion and commitment, maybe if we did have you down there with some real power, we could get some real solutions, right? We're going to come back to you with a question relative to our political climate in the state and whether it's going to be effective for you. But I want to go to Ms. Morris first, right? Final question for you, Ms. Morris. We have an opportunity in the state of Maryland, which should affect the city of Baltimore, to elect the third Black governor in these United States of America. The third Black governor elected in these United States of America, we have a chance to elect. He's campaigned on education. He's campaigned on crime reduction and leaving no one behind in Baltimore City. What's your take on that? And then you just saw Mr. Patterson say before he got off that he has a better feel and support for the Republican candidate, the Trump endorsed Republican candidate, Dan Cox. What's your take on the state politics affecting our city of Baltimore through Wes Moore? What's your thought about that?
First, I would like to say, like the young lady said, and my slogan is, where there's pain, misery, and suffering, there's a profit to be made. That's number one. As far as the difference between the Republican and Democratic parties, there's a significant difference between the Republican and Democratic parties at this time in this country. Simply because there is the stakeholders that are still in that old Trump mode, that the Constitution doesn't matter. If you look at you line up in terms of Mr. Moore, who I am supporting and who I am asking to come to our facility on the 1st to speak and to give his opinion. It's going back to the old way of the individuals who we elect. We want to know, and we want you to know us. Primary example is that if nobody knows, we asked also the Masons to come and be present. As the councilman stated, our councilman, who I live in, and I've been here since October of 2021 in this facility, which is a senior centers, a senior development, and 21217. We've had a difficult time even reaching out to him until I put a call in him to him as to say, either you come here and meet with us, or we'll come and meet with you and shut you down. At which time he came and met with us. There's an air over in this area that if you know about this, I guess I'm finding out about it. It is an area that, in terms of, yes, majority of African Americans represent us, but they're not doing anything to stabilize this community in terms of people of color. Most of the people of color that live in this area are primarily not stakeholders in terms of owning their properties, but what? Renters. And the rent in this area is so significant, but there's money to subsidize the building of these houses and renovation of these houses that the councilman has never put out to the people or lit
So
or went out
to the question, you said that you're supporting Westmore, and
yes,
that you're supporting Westmore, and Westmore, you've asked him to
be at our
work with.
facility on the 1st of October.
Okay, and I don't think that you didn't say that there was an ultimatum offered to him. Is that what you were implying?
Pardon me?
Did you mention an ultimatum?
No, to the councilman that's here.
To the
Costello.
councilman. Who's your
Yes.
councilman? Bullock?
No, Costello.
Costello. Okay.
Yes.
So you offered him an ultimatum. And
Yes.
so Miss Morris, I really appreciate you being here. I think Miss Flowers left on us. I'm going to give Lou, she'll hopefully come back. I want to give Lou Fields Lou, I think we got a couple minutes left. I want to give you 2 minutes as well to give your perspective on state politics affecting city politics, and whether to Mr. Giovanni Patterson's point, is Westmore going to be a asset to Baltimore City, as many people feel that he will? Lou?
I would hope so. Here again is what we have to do. We vote, right? We elect who we think is the best person, whose background, whose everything about this person says to us, he is the best or she is the best candidate to cast our vote for. The problem we have is once we do that, we have very limited tools to hold them accountable. We have very limited tools, except when we get a chance to vote again, to voice our opinions. Like Ms. Flowers talks about, the homeless do not have a voice that Mayor Scott is listening to, but they have a voice in her person of Mrs. Flowers, who they're listening to. Look at young brother Patterson. Look at how this young man has to take a part of his life, his family time and resources to do things based on the current climate of politics in Baltimore that this young brother should not even be going through. Black mayor, black this, black that, majority black city council. We should be rolling in black economics, particularly as we are coming out of COVID. Mm-hmm. The city cries about money. Well, you have a $4 billion budget. You decide how much you give to the police department, how much you give to the school education department, but you also decide how much you reinvest into your communities, in your people. Now, think about this. The Baltimore Ravens been downtown Baltimore since 1996-7. The Baltimore Orioles been there now 32 years. They've been down there. Look at the revenue coming in from Life City, the revenue coming in from the Baltimore Book Festival, the revenue coming in from Artscape, the revenue came in from the Baltimore Marathon, the revenue that comes in from tourism. All of those dollars collectively, some of that, a percentage of that, should be attacking the problems in these neighborhoods that we know have needed help so long. Crime, gunfire, vacant properties, lead paint, E. coli, and now we're dealing with everything like that. But meanwhile, if you go down on Pratt Street, Michael, you would never know Sandtown is in the same city. When I have my tour buses and I take the tourists through this Inner Harbor, Pratt Street, and by the time we get up to historic Pennsylvania Avenue, they ask me this question, a couple questions. Lewis, is this the same city? Lewis, why is Pratt Street so clean? And you say Pennsylvania Avenue is the most historic black community in the city or the state or the country, but why is it so trashy? Why is so much border buildings down here, Lou? We ain't see that downtown, Lou. What's going on, Lou? Are we in the same city, Lou? I've been hearing that for 25 years while dealing with black politicians downtown, who I talk to them every year about what they do with the budget. In 2011, I stood on the corner of Penn North, raised up my hands, had 4 or 5 people with me, Delegate Mary Washington Center staff. 2011, Michael, I said, if somebody don't get aware of what's happening up this area, something's gonna pop off. August 18th, 2011, front page Baltimore Sun. 4 years later, Freddie Gray died.
Wow.
Do you know?
Well, Lou, we have to bring you back, man. We're at a,
yeah.
We got another show pushing. Have to bring you back. You and Miss Morris, Mr. Patterson, Miss Doc Flowers, man. I really appreciate you, Lou, man. You have been an advocate for this city that has sacrificed immensely for many of us, particularly in tourism. Miss Morris, I hope to meet you one day. Thank you all both for being on the Donnie Glover Show.
All I want to say, Michael, over my career and over my years working with black folks in Baltimore, everything ain't always been all right among us as black folks. So today I want to offer a public apology to anybody who felt that Lou Fields crisscrossed them. I apologize to brother Casey Jenkins. I made a mistake. I made a mistake some years ago with Casey. I called him and I apologized to him, and I'm apologizing to him, you, and everybody else, because we're all trying to make our city better. And sometimes with black folks, we have a little friction, but we have to work together and rise above the little stuff that we might have had happen 3 years ago. So that's what I wanted to say in closing.
Hey,
let's say it's okay to vote for okay.
Lou, this is the good thing about this, and I'm gonna take a minute to go off of that, because that's the most powerful part of this broadcast, is when we as a people come together and collaborate and can admit and apologize, and understand versus always wanting to be understood. And I commend you as a man for what you just did, because that's a powerful thing. And I'm going to ensure that this is played again, because it's documented. This is a tape, man. And this is something that, I can't tell you, it almost has me in tears, the appreciation for you being a man to be able to admit you said when you're wrong and to apologize for any differences you may have with others. Thank you both for being on the Donnie Glover Show. My name is Mike Haynie. Today we talked about Question K. The bottom line is November 8th. Go out and vote. Go out and vote. Go out and vote. It's important that we vote as a people. Also, this Sunday on 60 Minutes in Black America, as I mentioned, we are talking about returning citizens, particularly those that have been wrongly convicted and watched. My name is Mike Haynie, your host of 60 Minutes in Black America. This Sunday, we'll be talking about wrongly convicted people in our judicial system here in the United States. Joining us will be Orlando Trey Jones III, who was convicted 37 years ago for a crime he didn't commit and just was recently released. Hear this story, click on this link to watch us live this Sunday at 6 p.m. on 60 Minutes in Black America. Thank you all for joining the Donnie Glover Show today. Donnie, thank you so much for allowing me to host. Lou, you have a great, wonderful weekend. Miss Macy and Mr. Patterson and Doc Flowers, thank you all. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Michael.
I feel nauseous, believe me. Never had a lot of shit come easy. Had to work hard, struggle just to be me. Had to and what was left over I put towards my dreaming. But the only thing in life that has meaning are the things you gotta work for, believe me. Take into your hands a plan, your own hands can land your own brand. And damn, I feel like no one takes accountability. They want the credibility, convincingly